It's a good morning to you all. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele and this is the Breakfast Club. And today we bring you yet another story where we talk to, former ZPRA comrades, combatants, commanders, and to get the interesting history of ZPRA. So there is this thing between the ZPRA military intelligence and NSO. And when I've talked to NSO guys, they think that the ZPRA military intelligence was cruel. They were putting people in Makotini and torturing people, accusing them of being Rhodesian spies. And I find that the ZPRA guys, the military guys, think NSO was just there to, replace them. Why this discord?
Firstly, like I said earlier, the death of JZ suddenly brought a lot of things over Mangena on the military. It put a lot of pressure on him because suddenly people saw some room or space to get in and take control. And that's where the problem was. It was now about Mangena is controlling a lot of things. So all lies came about and everything else that was earlier on not there. And suddenly you had people saying Mangena is doing this, Mangena has his own army, or all sorts of things that were completely unfounded. The truth part of it is this. NSO as an organization had absolutely nothing to do with ZPRA. ZPRA as a military force apparently also contributed in personnel that ended up in NSO. But it is these civilians, this civilian body that ended up, they were, let me put it this way, there were issues, in particular successes in ZPRA. The successes being first control, secondly the fighting, third the name itself brought in the Rhodesians talking about it. Everybody wanted talking about it. So therefore everybody wanted the control of that. So many people, not one, including politicians, people like John Nkomo and so on, they now wanted to poke their nose in what is really happening there and so on, to an extent that other people lied. And this came from, I'm sorry to say, NSO, that if we let people have big weapons, now everybody must start asking for weapons from Nkomo, Joshua Nkomo. Joshua Nkomo was not the commander of ZPRA. Joshua Nkomo was a political leader. He had absolutely nothing to do with the army. Like equally when it was still JZ, he had absolutely nothing to do with it. Absolutely. But then the moment JZ was gone, now everybody wanted to, now if I wanted to go and shoot at Kariba, attack Kariba town, and now have to ask for weapons from Umtala, Nkomo. We are not, so in other words, ZPRA was made weak. We had weapons, yes, but now they had to be asked for from Nkomo in order for us to do an operation. The whole thing turned out to be a little silly because whoever had suggested Mangena will make a coup, just don't know.
Yeah.
In circumstances that we're not controlling a country, what coup? And where were we going to use those weapons anyway? We were still under Zambian control. So this business of if we have big weapons, we will coup and all sorts of things. So those are nonsense.
There's this thing that people talk about, ZPRA having had the Air Force at one point.
Yes.
Did it ever own planes?
Well, on a promissory note, maybe. I will not have much knowledge on that. I always heard people say the Air Force. Well, all I know is that the Russians came down and said, we can create an Air Force for you if you so wish, and they wanted. So the Russians said, we will choose our own people. So they came and they chose the people that they wanted, people who were capable, who were going to be. And that's why we today have Elson Moyo today as the Air Force commander. Because the Russians wanted the people who were, I think, obviously with an academic knowledge at the same time, people who would be officer material and so on. It's not an easy thing to have a person responsible for a jet. It's something that is more complicated than just command and control of a military, that kind of thing. So it's something beyond that. So hence, we took some cadres to go and train in Russia. We did not have it as an operational force. It never got to be operational.
Yeah, you are in the front, and you were in the front as a zone, as a frontal command. I've heard this thing of, as ZPRA, we had liberated zones. Did you ever have liberated zones?
It's a myth. There was never a liberated zone in any corner of this country. Complete myth. But if the Rhodesians were overwhelmed, and firstly, the Rhodesian army was small. So the bigger part of it was reserve force, which and the territorial and so on. So they ended up with the bulk of the soldiers from almost, or let me say the whole military contingent being around the 70,000 or something like that. But it is not true that we push them anywhere, in any corner of this country, that we push them anywhere to create a free zone. What they did is that there are two things that they did. First, they had to concentrate their troops in the most important areas. If Kariba was essential and Victoria Falls was essential to keep these Rhodesian whites going to Kariba and get themselves entertained, they had to defend the Kariba, if you understand, and let the whole bloody bush. After all, it's not whether you go to the bush or you don't. It wasn't going to help them. Initially, in the earlier years, they would make follow-ups, bring in dogs, make follow-up for 4 days, and all sorts of things. Maybe have a contact, and by the time the helicopter comes, the whole thing was a waste. They call it lemon, or something like that. But at a later date, they let these guerrillas feel everywhere. But by that time, the black people, the consciousness was so high that they can no longer use their propaganda to influence the people. So they decided to leave them just that. But what they did is they deployed silo scouts in every place, and they had information every time. Once a group of you guerrillas came in, and a sizable group, and they would follow you, and they would bring in helicopters and so on and have a kill, that kind of thing. They were probably having a kill every day. But there was also a thing like they would freeze an area where no military units of any kind would enter that area. They would have a purpose to do so. They would post observers from various high points and see and locate guerrillas coming in and going out and so on. And they would raid you when they need to. So anything called liberated zone was only, we did not control any part of this land. whether it was Zanla or ZPRA, we were only free to go through and come out and that kind of thing, yes.
There is another story. I know you somehow you ended up being involved or you go there. There's this story that at one point, this helicopter that caused a lot of trouble in Zambia, Green Leader was downed by ZPRA guys. And I've heard a number of ZPRA guys say, no, we shot down Green Leader. And I know there's an incident where you go to Zambia, you end up going there, to comb the area. Did ZPRA shoot down Green Leader?
There is again, people don't understand it. Each and every operation has its code, right? Green Leader was coded as a specific operation. And that operation was specific in attacking FC camp in what you call Greenfield, is it? No.
Westlands. Yeah.
That was specific. So each of the pilots had its name and code name, and one of the code name of one of the guys who was controlling was called Green Leader. Green Leader is the guy who announced to the Zambian authorities that this is Green Leader, we are taking over Lusaka, we are taking over the control of Lusaka. And even the controller of Lusaka even asked if he could allow a Kenyan Airlines to come and land. He said, no, until we are finished with the operation, let him cycle somewhere. So as he was cycling elsewhere to come and land in 30 minutes, the Rhodesians aeroplanes were monitoring that same very aircraft, but they said he should not land. And they were controlling complete airspace, and they were telling the Mumba Air Force Base, the commander of the Mumba Air Force, was not to lift these aircraft, so they must remain down there, not to challenge Rhodesians. This is a specific operation. And these aircrafts, there were 4 of them named. One was Green Leader, the other one was Yellow, the other one was whatever, including the Dock 1, which was this is a Dakota, which was running through Kariba to Feira, just straight line back and back. It was carrying General Walls on the Rhodesian side, right at the border, and he was controlling and talking to all these people to tell him how the operation was going. So Green Leader happened to be I can't remember his name, whether it's Watson or whatever, a squadron leader. He even went to bomb in Angola. And he still was in Zimbabwe here. He never went anywhere. He never left this country until he died. So it's and in no any other place during these attacks in Zambia was Green Leader ever used again. The one I'm talking about was specifically for Lusaka, and that was it. But I hear people just generally talking because you fired a gun and then they say you hit Green Leader. No, that's not true.
But did your camps ever down or shoot down a plane?
Oh yes, there may have been small spotter planes, yes, and I remember since the engines being displayed and Nkomo displaying them at some point, yes. And helicopters too, yes. But the Green Leader issue, we must bury it because it was for a specific operation, and the person who did it came back with his recordings of Lusaka control and brought them the Rhodesia back to Rhodesia. It's everywhere in the news, it's everywhere in the books of history.
So one of the, maybe looking back at your mighty army, ZPRA, the great army that didn't win the liberation. In 1980, you come back, you control certain areas, or you are in certain operational areas. After ceasefire, ZPRA withdraws into assemble points. And Zanla goes in some of the operational areas, and they become no goes on for ZPRA. Was that a mistake? to withdraw totally.
Yes. Yes. The reason why there was a mistake is not probably because of our command, nature of command. We had no specific instructions. Zanla did specific instructions as to what must happen. It simply said to those people who are going, Chinguidos and everybody else, go to the camp. Go to the camp. You guys who are operational, you remain there. And that's simple. And they started going to politicize. In the first place, I thought it was naive of us as ZPRA to think that the politicians were going to campaign for us. Yet we are the ones who were in the field. I think it was silly lack of, I don't know. We were very naive in understanding politics. We should have remained in the field. The reason is simple people around us knew us, and they had, over the years, protected us, the same very people. So why did we leave to go into assembly points, all of us? So we left it free for ZANU to come. So ZANU cannot be blamed on that.
You know, talking about ZPRA, there's always this element. Now we're disciplined. Were you too disciplined that sometimes you lacked strategy because you were following orders?
It wasn't lack of strategy per se. Yes, discipline, but listen, amongst us, this is not true that we were all disciplined. Amongst us, we had people who were not disciplined at all, who were not falling under anyone's command, who were just running around and you know, completely total out of control. And the rest may have been undisciplined force. But what we mean by discipline, we mean people being under control of somebody, or the hierarchy as it goes. And yes, ZPRA was. And I think it was a good thing to hear that, because if there was lesser a problem at the end when ZPRA went into assembly points, you could pinpoint exactly where the renegades or these uncontrollable elements were. You could exactly tell where they were and easy to control. So that's what happened. And ZANU government then used the same ZPRA to go back to those operational areas to take those people out. So, and we did.
I mean, we are talking about almost 40 years now after the liberation struggle, and you've written books. When you sit down and reflect, what would you have done better?
Better
Militarily.
versus the current political situation? Or?
Yeah. In terms of military planning, what do you think ZPRA would have done better?
And let me put it this way, had Mangena been alive, we would not have been in a situation that it turned out to be. ZPRA would have done better in many ways. First, we were literally headed over to the Rhodesians. And the Rhodesians, well, call it, blame them, blame General Walls, blame McLean, blame everybody else. But the truth is, we were handed over to the Rhodesians to decide issues. In my case, for instance, I found myself in England in 1980, and in one of the top staff colleges in the UK. And I found myself a major general at that time. As a major general, deciding my life, and he didn't even know me, and deciding who I should be. This is in England. By the time I came down here, I went with other people like the former CIO director, Mzonzini, and then another guys who were really later big generals and so on. But they when they came this way, they may have been, this one is worth to be a lieutenant, this one is worth to be a captain, and this is there. And by the time they came here, Zanu said, no, we can't make you a captain. You become a colonel. You become a brigadier. You become. But us, we were just left in the hands of the Rhodesians, who, at that time, let's not forget the historical background of it all. There was more problems given to Rhodesians by ZPRA than they were from Zanda. So they were really, really angry and wanted to really do down ZPRA, and they did.
You know, I find that sometimes life is, can I say, strange. Because the person who's really a villain to some is a hero to others. And your story with Muzwambira is quite an interesting, because at one point when you were moving from one barrack to other, you call him and you give you favors.
Personally, as an individual, we liked each other. I mean, I have nothing against Muzwambira whatsoever. Neither does he. We were just saying, he would come to me and say, "Oh, do you like that posting?" I said, "No, I don't like it, you know." I said, "All right, fine. I'll give you another," you know, that kind of thing. On a personal level, he was a very nice, I'll call him a gentleman at that time. I don't know what became of him later, but at that time, when I had problems, I would say, Mzonzini, you know, I don't like this thing. I recall one time they sent me to 4 Brigade in some 4-3 Infantry Battalion, which was full of confusion and people were shooting each other, and political interference, Maswingo, people coming in and saying this, and a lot of it, and people here want to shoot Mugabe, and all the nonsense that was. I said to Mzonzini, I went back to Army headquarters and said, Mzonzini, I just don't like this place at all. Can you send me somewhere else? And he sent me to Bulawayo. So I was at peace for literally 6 months or something like that thereafter. But that was there are other people who would literally hate you, but I never faced that really, and maybe I here and there.
One of the things that I want to ask you, Zimbabwean politics has always been tribal from day one. Was there tribalism in ZPRA?
What a question. On the face of it, no. Completely not. But I'll tell you, at the end of it, when I say end, I'm talking about after the death of Mangena. There was people began to choose people. For instance, I'll give you an example. The moment we came in here, all commanders were thrown out, just like that. Senior commanders we had known all the time that they were senior commanders. Chirenda, Ambrose Mutiniri, everybody else was just thrown out. Just no excuse, no even explanation. And then suddenly we had young people from nowhere, just been recruits, and suddenly it's called colonel, brigadier, and whatnot. Where did that come from? And when now you look back and say, but so-and-so was put, who was he, and how did he come to be? And you see a lot of influence of NSO in it. That means NSO completely took over after Mangena's death in 1998. Completely took over, and they started now paging people. It was all so serious that even people who had been effective, and I regret to say, if there's any man I knew to be effective, I will tell you that Munyanyi, Gordon Munyanyi, ended up as a major or lieutenant colonel. He was demoted at some point from lieutenant colonel to some captain. I'll tell you, if there is anybody who was effective, it was that man, Gordon Munyanyi. He was extremely very effective. How then do you take him off from and then take him to go and be a representative in Libya? But who is this that influenced? It is not true that Joshua Nkomo influenced that, because Joshua Nkomo didn't know these people. Joshua Nkomo only came back in 1977 when he came back from home. Earlier on, he didn't know anybody. So how do you start paging people that way, the most effective people, and you remove them? How do you see yourself running an army if you have no continuity? It's unfortunate it ended up being what it was. And so answering your question, I will say tribalism started creeping in, not per se that it was really so tribal, but how could it not be tribal in a place like, in a case of Ambrose Mutiniri, the man who is chief of staff second from command, supposed to be taking over the command. Maybe he took over the command for a week and suddenly somebody paged him completely out. How did it come to be? How just can that be? And how do you have this strong army? How do you continue with this strong army when you have literally paged your senior commanders?
So finally, you build a strong army, which becomes its greatest weakness. Its strength becomes its weakness.
Its weakness. Yes, that is the irony of things. It's where the problem, when you look at it, really say, I still cannot believe today, if General Walls said if he took over ZPRA, he would have the greatest army in the world or in Africa. And it was true. But at the end of it, rather than the army running itself as an army, it ended up being run by some pseudo or civilian body. And I'm sure, even if you ask people like Vice President Mpoko, he would probably tell you the same. Because when you look, there are many suggestions at some point that, or if Ambrose cannot take, why don't we put Mpoko? And people saw Mpoko as replacing Mangena's whatever. And when going back to Mangena, it's, when you look at his structure, I think it was balanced, very balanced. But at a later date, there was no that balance. I want you to give me a balanced structure. I want you to look at it this way, that Mangena himself, call him Ndebele, yeah? Look at the chief of operations at that time, look at JD, Kalanga. Look at the chief of staff, look at Ambrose Mutiniri, Shona. Look at the Chirenda training, Shona. Look at Zwafa, who was chief of communications, Shona. Would you turn around and say it wasn't balanced? I don't think so. It was very, very well balanced, his structure. That's why we never, there was never a time in my whole ZPRA episode that I ever dreamt that this person is Shona. In fact, there wasn't anything like that. I operated with a man called Magarasadza. I operated with a man called Gutu. They were all Shona. I don't recall at any one time, sleep or not asleep, that, oh, this one is Shona. No, it never, ever occurred. We were just comrades, that kind of thing. Even today, I still speak to them. I spoke to Magarasadza yesterday. I speak to them every day. There's not a time I ever dreamed. But the moment, even when I was this side as the Southern Front commander, I had a very, very balanced structure of my command. completely structured with everybody in. And I didn't put them in because they were Ndebele or Shona or Kalanga. No. For instance, there is a misconception that the Kalanga were in total control. That is utter rubbish, because we also have to look at the geographical setup of this country and the historical aspects of the movement of people. At that time, the people who were more affected about the struggle, who got to know first, because they were affected in 1967 in particular, the Kalangas were introduced to gunfire first time. The fighting was there in Mabomane, in all those Plumtree areas. And so, hence the national hero, Stanley Kagisa, Tupu, and everybody else started moving there and there. Jack, Mpofu, everybody else got so, because the information was directly there, right on their face. They saw it. So they were the very first people who went out. So who did you expect to be in command then, if they had been there earlier? So they were the first people to be in command, and they remained there for quite a long time. But at the end of it all, they were not. They moved out, and none of them became anything.
Okay, I think we can, there's a lot that we can talk about. We can, I guess we'll continue with this conversation and learn more about other issues. But today in the program, I was talking to retired Major Irvine Sibhona, Barbeton, as many of veterans know him, and we were reflecting on ZPRA, what went wrong, what went right, and it's the story that we'll tell for a long time. But I like the openness. I like some of the angles that we've never explored, that we are talking about, and I hope that I'll get more ZPRA guys coming in and talking. And like he said, I think it's time that we look back and reflect and learn from those mistakes, because I find that sometimes when I have ZPRA guys, they don't want to talk about the bad side. We can glorify, yes, ZPRA was a good army, they were great, but they lost the war to Zandla and to ZANU, and clearly there are things that went wrong, and we need to look at those things and learn from them. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. Till we meet again in other programs, have a good day.